Hello and welcome to Gulotta Studios. Back here on the YouTube page. Going to be doing something a little different today. This here is a panel, and of course hands wash clean. That's one of the things I always do. And what I've done is this is an 8-ply birch panel. Each layer with its grain going in different directions, so there's no warping, no bending. It's very important with painting because if it starts to bend and twist, it's going to crack the paint and the paint's just going to fall right off. To protect the wood, I've sized it all with a glue sizing, and this helps to protect the wood fibers from the natural acids found in linseed oil and the other harsh chemicals that I may be using when creating a painting. After that, I put on a thin layer of oil priming, which I've allowed to dry for 6 months. This means that the surface is absolutely ready. Now, I did not sand this down. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring this, if I can find there we go, a little tag there, and that's more of me. Don't think you need that. There we go. I'm just going to bring that in as a nice close-up, and this whole area is lightly textured, and that is called the tooth of a surface. And you want the surface to have a nice bit of tooth, because without that there's really not much for the paint to then hold on to. It's got to hold on to something. It doesn't just sit there magically and ta-da, I'm here and I'm good. No, we're not doing that. Now, panel is very interesting because of its rigid nature. And that means that you can get very fine details on that because your brush is not going to find any give like it does with linen or cotton canvas. I don't like using metal because I use a lot of traditional oil paints and some of them really don't react well to metal, so I have to make my own panels sometimes. And a lot of the panels that are available today are very, very expensive. If you know how to make wood panels, well, then you're all set. The materials themselves are actually fairly inexpensive. However, the labor involved is immense, and there's a lot of labor that goes in preparing a panel for painting. Now, I'm making this panel because I want something that's colorful and detailed. I realize that some of my works lately were either palette knife work, like my Cityscape series, excuse me. Yes, this is unedited and pretty much close to live. And I also have been working on some Mammoth Cave paintings, and those are, while detailed, some of them are colorful, some of them are not, but they're very much of a theme. I want to just let my mind dream a little bit, and I want to give myself the breathing space to just go off on my own and swim my own waters for a second. So I want panel, I want details, I want colorful details, and this probably will end up on Facebook Live at Facebook/David Gulotta or at Art by Gulotta Studios, and that's on Facebook, or it'll be here and I'll be working on it whenever I want to work on something colorful and highly detailed, because it will take me a long time to do. So what do? How do you start off? I've got one of my very very used palettes. This one is heavy. It's so well used, and I know some people love to have a clean palette. I don't know. I like a dirty palette. What can I say? I'm just one of those people. Well, I've got a beautiful Schwenningen blue, which is a phthalo blue made by Old Holland. In fact, all my colors are Old Holland here. I have a cadmium yellow medium, and I've got an Old Holland bright green. These three colors work well together. They play well together. They're related to each other. The blue and the yellow marry, and they don't mess each other up. So I'm going to start with just 3 colors. Now later on, once each layer dries, I'll be able to use all kinds of colors, reds and purples and whatever I feel like using. even grays and hot pinks, who cares, you know? But this is primarily for color, so I'm going to be going for vibrant colors here. But I have to get a layer of color on here just to get things going. I don't have a particular project in mind. I don't even have an idea in mind. We're just going to see what my hand wants to do today. So this is kind of special. So what I do is I have raw turpentine here. This is a very high grade, highly distilled turpentine. Actually, it doesn't smell that bad. It smells like pine, really. And good turpentine should not smell terribly bad. I know a lot of people complain about the odor of turpentine, and yes, it is dangerous. Yes, that's true. But if you have a well-ventilated system, my studio has windows, it has a door, it's got a fan going. I'm able to clear out everything pretty quick. I also have an emergency fan in my office here, and that is used to blast air out of the studio and to the other fan in the drawing studio. I have two studios linked one on the top floor of my home. It's actually where the attic would be. So instead of having an attic, I have a double studio. You can do that too if you have an attic. Yes, you can. You can make a studio almost anywhere. So I'm going to use the turpentine to thin the paint, and this will accelerate drying. I actually read somewhere where someone was concerned that the turpentine would delay drying. No, it accelerates drying, not by much though. And with oil paint, you don't want things to dry too quickly anyway. So this is going to be fast. It's going to be fun. I'm going to use one of my big bristle brushes, just a cheap bristle brush, nothing fancy, nothing, you know, it's not one of the major brands. I'm just going to dip it into the turpentine and then into the paint. And that waters the paint down so it becomes like an ink. All right, there we go. This inky color here. Oh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? I like that. I'm just going to make these squirrely shapes here. I love the use of loops. Really brings a lot of interest in. Almost looks a little graffiti-like. I guess that's kind of my roots. I grew up as a kid in the Bronx, saw a lot of graffiti. Doodle-oo. But that's for another conversation. That's not for today. There we go. There we go. These nice big broad strokes here. Just bring that yellow right into play. And we're just going to have fun with this. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to have fun. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing with this. And I'll figure it out as I go along. There are some dings and marks in this. A couple of bugs got onto the priming. It's not really a big deal. But, all right. But that will eventually be covered with layers of paint. So now I've got this very bright, lots of yellow. And this is a medium yellow. Think about that for a second. This is a medium yellow. You can only imagine what the yellow bright would be like, or the lemon yellow. That's very bright. Wow, that's quite a color. I'm going to put my brush aside. And even with this, I am making very sure that the paint does not reach the ferrule or the metal part of the brush. Excuse me while I wash my brush off. Especially with turpentine thinning the paint, it can ooze into the ferrule if you don't wash the brush right away. So I'm dissolving that. There we go. Much better. I'm just going to dry the brush off on my rag here. Always have, you see, it came out nice. Always make sure you have a lot of rags in a studio. It really helps. Now, the next thing I want to do is I actually want to bring in the green. I like to work from light to dark. Just seems like a natural way to go. And the green is my middle color, whereas the yellow is my bright color. I'm going to do the same thing. Ooh, lovely swoops. Yeah, we like swoops, I guess, today. All right. Now, this is something that my hand has not been able to do for Mammoth Cave. It hasn't been able to swoop things around and, you know, do all kinds of crazy curly acrobatics here. But today, for this piece, I can. And that makes me very, very happy. You know, and I think Bob Ross has a point. If what you're doing with painting doesn't make you happy, you're doing something wrong. There's something that you should be doing that maybe you're not doing. And I've seen that. I've seen it with students. I've seen it with professionals. And I see it all the time where people are working on something that's so serious. And you gotta wonder, are you having any fun whatsoever with this amazing talent that you have? Or with the skills that you have grown into? I mean, painting is a craft, so there's a lot of skill involved, as well as having the talent helps. Having vision, that's something you can't teach anyone. But, you know, how to draw what you see in front of you and being able to put recognizable shapes on a canvas, or even know your color theory, that requires training. That requires practice. It requires learning. So, you know, if you spent all that time training yourself to be an artist, and all of a sudden it's like you hate what you do, what are you doing? Does that make sense? It doesn't make any sense. All right, I'm going to go back to my brush I used for the green. I'm just going to, after cleaning it off, I'm going to go right into the phthalo blue. I like phthalo blue. I know some people don't, but I really do. I like it. Although, truth be told, I prefer cerulean. But for something like this, I'm not going to use a paint that's so expensive. Oh, unbelievable. Oh, there we go. And this color is also a lot of fun. And you can see the little spots where it reaches the white of the priming. It really comes out as this lovely, lovely shade of blue. I like to work very dark at the top and work my way down. Now I guess I'm doing curlicues. Okay. That's great. You know, my body wants to do that. My hand wants to sit there and move in that manner. Who am I to stop it, right? Yeah, it's having fun. The whole idea of this particular painting is to have lots of fun with it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have fun. All right, so you can see already that these three colors work very nicely together. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, after all, we are talking about blue and yellow and green. So they complement each other very nicely. I'm going to bring in some more of the yellow. And this also brings in some nice interest here and there. I want to brighten some spots. There we go. That's kind of nice. There. And then I'm going to do something that I like to do when I've got a painting of this nature all set. When I'm trying to make something kind of fun, kind of bizarre, you know, kind of odd. This is what I do. There we go. Bring in some more of these curls of green. Just like that, a little bolder this time, kind of like the yellow, a little bolder. Well, I'm going to keep some of the bold colors down here, or up here rather. There we go. Let's get that going. There. And I'm going to go right into the blue. I'm not even going to bother cleaning off the brush at this point. I want some of these blue elements in there. I want them around. I want them in there. Nice, bright colors going into this. And I'm going to go right into the yellow, nice and thick. No turpentine this time. Just bring it in. It'll all mix together. And that's what I'm going to do next. We're going to mix these together and make ourselves a crazy, dreamy background. Think of it like looking at clouds. You know, if you've ever sat back on a bright day full of clouds and you're looking at the clouds and seeing, you know, all kinds of shapes, you know, castles, sleeping giants, you know, the usual stuff. I don't know if that's actually usual, but it's what you hear in literature a lot. dreaming and looking at clouds. Oh, look, a bunny. Yes, that does happen. The mind creates patterns. Well, I'm doing the same thing here. I'm building up a cloudscape for myself to dream on. So I can notice the different patterns and colors that are there and see what my mind comes up with. But this is going to be a very colorful piece. There's going to be lots of colors. Why? Because I said so. And what I'm going to do now is I need another brush in order to finish this. But first, let's do what I got to do next. Bring this up. And I'm going to flip it right over on its head. There. This way, even I cannot predict where these colors are going to be. I want to be sure that it's going to look brand new to me, rather than, oh yeah, I remember doing that. Yeah, same old, same old. No. We don't want that today. We don't want that today. What we do want, though, is we want a couple of extra brushes. And these brushes have to be very, very soft. So we've got ourselves a nice, soft filbert. Let's see, this is a Italian art store mongoose, synthetic mongoose. And this is a Raphael fan brush. And now I'm going to blend. So, since I went in curves, I'm kind of going to do the opposite. I'm going to just go straight through and just start blending these things together and seeing what I come up with. And this takes a while to do. You don't want to destroy all the little details, but you also want some blending. You don't want any of the background to really show. There we go. And get some of this in. I'm going to twirl a little bit here. This is mostly going to be a green piece with darks that come from the blues and lights that come from the yellows. And just these little patches where the paint is just barely over the priming. Now the priming is old enough that it hasn't really absorbed the paint. You can always tell priming that's too young because it just soaks up the oil from the paint. And here that hasn't happened. There we go. It's already absorbed atmospheric moisture. So it's a nice ground that protects the wood, gives you a nice surface to work on. Oh yeah, that's nice and dark there. Isn't that nice? All right. I'm going to finish off in this direction, and I'm going to go in the other direction, I think. I think that's a real necessity. All right. Now let's go in this direction. Just broad sweeps just across. Good. I'm going to take my fan brush and just very carefully go back and forth and just blend this up a little bit. All right. Still a little too focused, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my big blender here. Get all the paint off of it. We don't want that all over the place. There we go. There we go. Now get that nice and clean. Yeah, so it's all set. I've got my little tabaret cart here. It's all full of stuff. I'm not going to dry it off too much. I want some of that turpentine left on the paint. I'm going to start up here because this is the brightest spot. So this is the spot where I want a lighter color. If I start down below, what's going to happen is I'm going to end up with a painting that looks kind of odd. It's not going to have any details. It's all going to be dark, and I want this to be light. I want a lot of light here. There we go. And any lights that I lose, I can always reestablish with other paint. So now I've gone from that brightness deep into the darkness here. Bring that up. And this also makes some sense. Because again, we human beings tend to think of up as being brighter because we have a sky. And down to earth always seems a little darker because of the general colors of the ground. Whether it's greens or browns or blacks or grays, it seems darker than the sky, which is blues and yellows and oranges during sunsets, things like that, these vivid colors from the sky. All the ground colors that we experience are reflected light. They're reflected from the sky. They hit the ground objects and then they just kind of bounce off the surface. All right, so now we got a lot of odd little details in here. I'm gonna bring in some details once I get this well established. There we go. You can see some of that tooth is beginning to show itself. So we're just gonna make sure it's nicely in. Again, I don't want to lose all my details here. I want to make this very cloudy, very dreamy. All right, now I'm going to take the fan again. And we're just going to go back and forth and just smooth out the brush strokes. If you see something like a hair, take care of it at this stage. Otherwise, it will plague you throughout the painting. Trust me on that. A friend of mine used to say that he could always tell it was one of my paintings because invariably there was a beard hair stuck into the surface. And I'm like, that's great. So I had to change some of my practices. Note, I did not change the beard. No, thank you. I like my beard. But I did have to change some of my painting practices. Not be lazy, make sure I catch things before they become problems. Had to be a little proactive about that. And the texture is very interesting because of the panel itself. The panel really lends quite a bit. And here I'm just blending in a variety of directions. I don't want the brush strokes to be clear. The only thing that's going to be clear is the tooth of the panel. That will be clear. There's no way around that until heavier paint is applied to everything. But the brush strokes I want to very gently illuminate. So all I have are variations of green from these deep colors here to these lighter colors at the top. All right. Now my hand wants to do some pouncing. So I'm going to take some of the blue and I'm just going to pounce it around. I'm going to take a little of the green, I'm going to pounce it around. There we go. I'm going to take some of the blue and pounce it around. Who knows what I'm doing here? Pounding away. And it's interesting because the panel itself has such a different feel to it than the canvas. It really is. It's very, very different. If you've never worked with panel and you like to paint, try it out. There are a few companies that make a decent panel. There's also a few that put linen, oil prime linen on panel. I highly recommend those. That's fun too. It's less of a process than making, say, a plaster panel. Then you got to make your own plaster, and that can be a job. And then you're laying it in, and you're sanding it, and you're laying it in, you're sanding it. It just becomes a whole process. I have no idea what my hand is doing. That's okay. It's one of the reasons why I like talking when I work. Gives my hand the freedom to do whatever it wants. I don't know what it's seeing, but it's seeing something, so I'm just letting my hand do the work. There we go. Bring that up. All right, and then a final blend. Again, this is just to get rid of unnecessary brush strokes. So things kind of smooth in. And normally I would use a medium to help me with that. But today we're not using medium, we're using a solvent. And the two are very different, they behave very differently. So here, if I want a smooth surface for my beginning, it means a little more manual labor for me to finish up the effect. There we go. Now any brighter color that I want in here, I'm going to have to wait until this is dry. But here's the good news. Because I use the turpentine, it's probably going to only take a few days for this to dry. So by next week, I'll be ready to put on the next layer, and you'll be able to see what it is that I end up doing. So it's very exciting. We got this all set up. Look at these poor brushes. Oh my goodness. They worked hard today. Let's be grateful to our lovely brushes. And I hope that you have enjoyed this little demo video. And I hope that you have a fantastic day, and happy painting to you all from me here at Gulotta Studios, David Gulotta, and have a great day. Thank you for watching. Take care.